So, welcome back. Got a whole host of things we're going to try to get done today. A bunch of stuff that wasn't originally in scope for the project. So the first thing I want to do is actually lay out all of the parts that I've got to do some replacing. So I can talk through kind of what happened, what I found, and then the items I had to research to figure out what the right path forward was going to be. So we'll get to that, and then we'll move on to actually replacing things. Alrighty, so a couple things I want to talk about here. So once upon a time, kind of dark in here. In fact, let's talk about it this way. So this is the water pump that came out. And you can see it wasn't actually in terrible shape, though the seal on this, oddly, the coolant is dried on there, and so it's left all kinds of like salts and stuff behind. But interestingly, it almost appears as though that thing may have got melted slightly. So it must be getting pretty hot down there. The thermostat housing, which will get reused, I gotta go in here and kind of Scotch-Brite it or clean it up somehow to get all that stuff off of there. So I'll gotta take care of that. But these, as you may recall, were the two hoses, or this one primarily, had a hell of a time getting this hose off of here, this bypass hose. This one had some difficulty, likewise on this side. So what I went ahead and decided to do was replace the hoses. So these are the two hoses that go here, and then I have three hoses here, one of which goes here. So this is actually where the oil cooler comes in. Let's see if we can look down in here. So here, which you can't see very well, that's a little bit better. So this is the one that attaches to the water pump. And then it connects to this metallic hard line here, and then goes and takes another bend and goes into the oil cooler, which is right there. From the oil cooler, it actually takes another 90-degree bend up into the block. So I've decided I'm just going to go ahead and replace all those since I'm down here and I've got everything opened up. It's be a lot more difficult to do if everything else was in place. So they were not free, but easier than ripping all this apart again to get in there, should they decide to leak or have other problems down the road. What I am toying with, and you can't see very well in this lighting, is right at the tip of my finger there is the oil cooler itself. The oil filter attaches to it, and it can be removed. I haven't figured out exactly how it's attached yet, but there's a seal up inside of there. I bought the replacement, which is that little silicone ring right there. But what I'm not sure is whether or not I will take that off of there or not. It's probably the right thing to do since I'm already in here. I went ahead and bought the part just in case. So that might be part of our scope growth. We'll see if we get to that today. But those are all the hoses I got to replace on this section. Okay, so I don't know if you can tell the difference, but I went ahead and took like a plastic putty knife and scraped off the worst of it, like all of the accumulated stuff was on the back of here. So it's pretty smooth. Went very, very gently with a metal putty knife, and then kind of did the same to take off anything that was too hard for the plastic putty knife. And you can see it's still got some discoloration. It's physically smoother. There are some little high spots and stuff in here. What I tried to do was avoid getting into the aluminum of the housing itself. But I got to thinking about something. I think I'm going to try to kind of polish that surface a little bit, so it's nice and uniform and flat, and it presents itself to the seal real well. The trick here is going to be making sure two things. One, I don't gouge it, so doing it by hand, I'm just taking a piece of sandpaper and rubbing. Kind of seemed like maybe not the thing to do. In addition to that, when you do mechanical seal design like this, fluid seals, one of the things you want to be careful of is getting any kind of marks that go from the high pressure side to the low pressure side, ambient in this case, because what those will do is they'll become little channels that your fluid can then squirt through. So you want to make sure that the marks from your machining or polishing go circumferentially around, such that they don't present like little, troughs that the fluid can leak through. So you gotta be careful. You don't want to polish this direction. So what I was going to do, which I won't be able to show you in action, was I have a granite plate. This is a granite tile Pretty flat, at least flat enough for this purpose here. And then a piece, this happens to be some 2000 grit sandpaper. So I had this stuff sitting around. I use this granite tile as a nice flat reference surface for sharpening things. It's a kind of a nice way to go. And then the sandpaper kind of conforms to the flatness of that surface, and it's a real nice fine. And then what I'll do, this is all going to move, but you can imagine I'm going to twist like this on the sandpaper, and then that way it'll put, you know, marks that go around and not across the sealing surface. So I'm going to do that and see what it looks like. Well, every project has a way of doing this, but this one's still not done, but I thought I'd kind of give you an in-between view here. So I'm making some progress, but what I'm seeing is down here, it's not going to show up, I don't think, entirely, but you can kind of tell where the black spots are. Those are the low spots. It does appear that there's some corrosion that occurred, so the water, I keep wanting to call it the neck, the thermostat housing here sits about like I'm showing it, such that, you know, down here near my thumb is where gravity sits, and it's also where the exhaust manifold is, so it's hotter. And it appears either as a result of all of those things or just some pre-existing defects, we've got some corrosion products. There's some pitting all along the bottom here. They're fairly shallow. I'm gonna basically kind of keep polishing this surface. I'm not sure if you can see there's a sort of a sheen to it that's resulting from the way I'm twisting this thing, which I think is what I want. And yep, you can kind of get a good sense of it there. But anyway, so I'm going to kind of keep going on this. I've had to go up to 400 grit sandpaper here, keep it fairly fine, and see if I can polish most of those out. If not, I'll have to buy a new thermostat housing, which I prefer not to, but we'll see what we can get away with. Alright, interestingly, this seems to like move at a glacial pace for me, but let's see if I can get that in focus. It probably seems to move faster on film, because you guys just get to skip all that stuff. So it's getting better, but I think you can start to see the areas I was pointing to earlier, because they're the dark spots still. So basically I'm just going to keep polishing this down, hopefully until all those little dark spots are gone, because those are basically corrosion pits. So we're going to see if we can polish all that corrosion pitting out. Ooh. Chrome spray paint? No. Aluminum dust. This stuff will put you on the moon. It's not some kind of drug reference. This is actually one of the important ingredients, aluminum powder, in solid rocket motors, along with a kind of rubbery compound. Turns out that this stuff likes to oxidize so much that you can use it almost as a fuel. Anyway, it is a result, of course, of grinding all the aluminum off of here. So you can see we've gotten better. Hopefully we'll maintain focus here. Not perfect. And we got some areas right here. So, and then there's a couple little leftover spots here. I'm going to try a little farther. Fortunately, while these are still visible, the depth of them has gotten very, very small. And that might just be the best I can hope for. So I'm still at 400 grit. I'm going to step up to 600 probably, and then 2000, and then I may actually come back at the end with 400 to put these marks back in perfectly circumferential. Woohoo! Okay, I don't know if you can tell. Let's see if we can get the good light really shining off of this thing. So that's a I'll call it a random orbit 2000 grit finish. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my circumferential marks on ever so carefully on the 400 grit, and that'll be my final sealing surface. Okay, I would say we are now pretty close to, well, not pretty close. We're done with this surface. And hopefully the light's kind of picking up the circumferential marks that go around there. It's probably different than the way it came from the factory, but that's okay. So it's a slight bit shorter, but it's by such a small amount. Let's see here. Yeah, that's by such a small amount that if the camera might be making it look a little bit tapered, it does not look that way in hand. But in any event, So it's nice, it's a good flat surface, got 99% of the defects out. These, I mean, they barely catch a fingernail, so they're not terribly deep. I think the seal can accommodate that. And then as you can see, hopefully in the light here, it's got that kind of circumferential marks, kind of give that interesting little shine pattern to it. And hopefully all goes well and I am able to get this thing to seal readily. Alright, so looking at the oil cooler now, zoom out a little bit. So I've toyed with the idea of pulling this off to get to the seal that goes between the oil cooler and the block. Kind of dusted off the road grime that had kind of collected, and if you could see back around the other side, which I'm not really sure you're going to be able to, you can kind of see where the road grime ends. Basically, you know, this is the front of the car, so it kind of gets deflected around the edges. So it looks like there's no leakage that I can see. It's just like an accumulation of probably very slight, I don't know what exactly causes it, but there's this accumulation of stuff on there. It does not appear to me to be signs of leakage, just an accumulation of a little bit of road gunk. As such, I think I'm going to risk more harm than good by taking that off of there, so I'm not going to take it off. I'm just going to leave it as it is. And I am going to replace this hose, and then there's a hose on the back side of here. I'll have to lift the car up to really get in there to it, but I'm going to replace those two hoses. And then the other one I mentioned earlier is this hose. So we'll get those three replaced, because I know that those are kind of getting aged. Any of these areas where they're next to something hot and moving something hot, it's a great way to just wear out the rubber over time. So we'll get all that taken care of next. I don't think I ever mentioned these things. These are pliers specifically for hose clamps. What's nice about them is they're kind of have this locking feature, so once you get them locked, they hold, and you got to release them to bring them back apart. So it uses the spring tension of the hose clamp to push against. They're kind of nice. And then they got these little features. I don't know if you can see those too well, but there's two different kinds. One for this style of hose clamp, and then there's another kind for the kind of more wire type. They came in a little set from Amazon. They're kind of a no-name, but they're not terrible. And when they come off, they come off. So this is the hard line with the two, well, the only one left, but it's got that piece coming off the end there. Okay, let's see if I can show this to you. I'm not sure if this is showing or not, so I apologize if it's all blur. But that's the hose I was thinking about replacing. If you can see, it's got these very interesting little wings on it. Those are integral to the hose clamps. I've never seen something quite like that. It doesn't look special. It looks like hose clamps that just look really, really difficult to get to without pulling the whole thing off. And I'm just not inclined to deal with that today. The good news is this is as inaccessible now as it is when this whole job is done. So I'm just going to leave that for now. I still have all the parts I have the part to replace, should I decide that I want to replace it. So we'll see. I don't want to take on too much more. So that's staying. So in addition, I'm going to pull these two bypass hoses. What they attach to up at the top end is a little unclear to me. But I'm going to pull the
pull them off as well. They both sit right over the manifold here, and they showed evidence of kind of like loss of their internal structure because it was kind of stuck permanently to the water pump when I pulled it out. So we'll go ahead and get those replaced as well. One of the ways to know that things didn't go like you'd hoped is when hoses don't come out as a hose, but as a plural, not a singular. So, as I feared, the end of this thing appears to have, like, I don't even know what's going on. Let's see if I can get some more light on it. Maybe it'll be more obvious. Ooh, that's bright. Let's not stare into the light. Let's use a little, let's see here. I can't even see in there. Okay, you can kind of see here, maybe. Let's do some zoomy. Okay. Yeah, see all that kind of like roughness right there? That's not from me chiseling this thing apart. It's like it basically, and there's still material left on the barbed fitting, which I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to get that off, but do our best to get that off and just try to clamp above it, I guess. But yeah, this thing was probably starting to go. I don't know what's causing it. It's basically something eating the inside, it's causing it to like fuse to the barb, and so then it just does not come off. So that bad boy didn't come out too easily. I've got one more in there, and it's further up, so I can't even reach it and cut it. They make a device. So this is not it. This is a dental pick. I actually used one of these already and straightened it right out. But basically it curves all the way over. It's significantly more robust than a dental pick. And you can get it onto the end of the hose and start to pull. And then kind of also reach around and break that seal a little bit. And I think if I pull at the top and pull at the bottom, that'll help. So I think this might be my stopping point for today. So I'm going to need to get one of those contraptions, I think. Hopefully the regular auto parts store holds one. I guess while I'm under here, I should probably pull the oil cooler hose off. Depending on how you've seen this video, it may appear that I already did that. The magic of editing. So we'll move to the other side, see what we can do over there. Oh, oops. Backlighting. Yeah, I had a wardrobe change, and then day change, and an afternoon change, and some of a morning change. But as you have already figured out, didn't remove that other hose from the oil cooler, so I'm back to dealing with the bypass hose that I was struggling with yesterday. I talked about getting a tool for it. All the tools I could find they're a hook basically, but they're so big. The diameter, the radius of the curvature of that hook is so big, I wouldn't be able to fit it inside the small space. So I'm gonna cut it and then basically take it out in pieces. I'm gonna have to kind of figure out how to get up in there and split it off there, but we'll get there. So that's the next step in the process today. So here you go. This is the hose of interest. And as you can see, well, as you might be able to see, to get to the other end of it, way up in there, it's a rather tight space, so I can't actually get any hook up there. So that's why I'm gonna cut down lower here, and then I might be able to fish something up in there and at least break it free. But then ultimately, I'm gonna have to cut it. It'll be a little bit of a pain, but we'll get there. So that's the next step in the process. Okie dokie, got her off of there. Had to cut this end and then basically run a blade up there, split it to get it off. It just wasn't going to come otherwise. I don't know if you can tell. You can kind of see there's like a rust in there. These all seem to be seizing where there is a steel or some kind of iron. So I think it's building up just enough like layer of rust that they're binding real bad. The aluminum ones are binding, but not quite as badly. So anyway, that's what's going on there. So we got those off. So now I've got to put these all back on. These are going to be a little tricky on the replacement because I need to know basically how high up to take them.
So I'm going to make some marks on the new ones with a little bit of paint pen so I can get kind of a visual indicator of where they need to go and then work from there. Okay, so my trick for installing these hoses, because here, let's look at a comparison between the size of that hose and the size of the hose it's replacing. You can see that the old one has kind of swelled over time. So and that one was hard to get off, so this one's not going to be easy to get on by itself. You can try to just shove them on there. However, I find that an extremely small amount of dish soap placed on the inside is an excellent lubricant. So obviously be very careful with that. You don't want to go frothing the coolant all up. However, a very small amount in there seems to do a real bang-up job on that. I think my dad taught me that. So there we go. So I wanted to point something out while I have the chance here. This is not the line I'm currently putting something on. It's that hard line's in there, but they have this little secondary bump out in here, and that's where to kind of sets the hose depth. So that way you can kind of know where to get it on. Like I say, with a little bit of lubricant, and I mean like a film on a glove or something like that, and then just applied to the leading edge. I'm using this as an example, but just right around the rim of there is enough to slide that all the way on there pretty good. You still got to push, but if you overdo it, I can't imagine it would be good for it, but it'll really get in there and make it a lot easier to insert, and then those little bumps there will stop it in the right place. Alright, so you can see I have it loosely attached in here, but we replaced this hose on the hard line and then this hose, and so those are ready to go. When the water pump is back in here, this will sit right here and attach to the water pump, but for now I'll just kind of have it bent out of the way. So next thing is probably going to be build the water pump. Alright, one of these things is just like the other. So this is obviously my new water pump. Pretty much everything in this kit of things I got is one for one manufacturer wise. This is an exception. This is the original pump, which is made by, as you can see here, Yamada. Obviously it's made for Subaru by Yamada, and this one here, as you can see, is made by a company called Asen, who's also the company who puts the whole kit together. So this is the part that they don't make. It is made in Japan, as you can see by the casting stamp there, just like this one. And I used the same brand of kit for my Outback and had good luck with it. You can see two of these, one for one. So pretty much the same. I think there's I don't know, obviously this one's got a different color appearance, just from age and use, but otherwise they're pretty much exactly the same. Okay, I got the thermostat installed, and you can see this is the old one that came out of here. This was getting a fair bit of stuff built up around here, so I'm sure this would have been causing me some troubles leak-wise eventually, if it wasn't already beginning to. So the one thing about these Subaru is this little jiggle valve. Ask me what it does. It's funny, it looks kind of like the pressure relief on a... it looks like the pressure relief on a pressure cooker, but it's not, because it's actually retained in there. So I don't really know exactly what it does. It might be a pressure relief valve, but I can't quite figure out how it's supposed to work, because it's not sprung or anything like that, and it doesn't have weight on its favor. Though, they tell you this needs to go up. Like, so this thing sits, you know, dump the thing out, but it sits as you're looking at it, where this is up, and that needs to be at the top. So the only thing I can think of, maybe it's some kind of air relief of some kind, like to get air, trap bubbles or anything like that out of there. So anyway, this is what's going to go in here. It has a metal gasket that goes on the back. What is interesting about these, generally speaking, when you put any sort of seal or gasket on, you use a star pattern. So you can kind of see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fasteners that hold it on. Normally you would kind of do some kind of, you know, star pattern so that you uniformly push the whole thing down and you don't get a wrinkle or a crinkle in your gasket. For whatever reason, this is true on both of the Subarus I've done this on, this has a circular pattern, so you start here and you go around. And it tells you to do it twice at the same torque, which is also interesting. I'm not really clear why that is. So that's something that's kind of odd about this. I don't know if it has to do with metal gaskets. I haven't, admittedly not on the design side, never dealt with metal gaskets. I usually deal with elastomer gaskets. Speaking of elastomer gaskets, here is the thermostat housing, which will sit on top of here, like so. And then this surface right here, oops, this surface here is the one that's going to seal against this gasket. So I had some video in the last video about dealing with this surface and trying to clean it up and get it all nice and smooth. It's actually smoother than it looks at this point. So that will go on, yay verily, and then has some fasteners which are going to get torqued down. So I'll make this connection before I try to install it, because it'd be a little bit of a bear to try to get in there and install that otherwise. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to install this and then pop it into the vehicle, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. Alright, it is in, it is torqued. Likewise, the hard line down here is in and connected. That was a bit of a trick. Probably should have put that elbow on first, not last, but you know, you live and you learn. And then I got the two hoses that I struggled so much with getting off. Whoops, there's one on my light. Back on. So I think this is probably where I'm going to call it for today. Kind of give you a view in there. And so yeah, that should get us pretty far along. And call that a stopping point.